Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Astronaut TCG. Thank you so much for watching. So today we are recapping my top 16 performance, 14th place at the Portland Regional Championships with around 1,500 players, and I was playing Fusion Mew. So what we're doing in this video, we are recapping some of my matches. I'm going to talk a bit more about the list, and then we'll go into like one or two details on matchups as we go through. If you have any questions about the list, about my matchups, or just like how to play specific matchups, drop those in the comments below. I'm happy to talk. But let's just jump into it. So first off, here is my run. I went 11, 3, and 1. This is my second straight tournament with no natural ties because this round 9 tie was an intentional draw to get into day 2. So I'm really proud of myself because one of my goals coming into these tournaments was to play faster and not take any ties, since ties are really bad for you. But we started off round 1 with the big bad of the tournament, Lost Zone Giratina, which ended up winning the whole thing. And Lost Zone Tina, I think, is a pretty favorable matchup for Mew, and especially Fusion Mew. And the reason for that is that you are able to put on so much pressure onto their Giratinas, and you're able to one-shot their Tinas if you conserve your power tablets and your choice belt, but they are not able to kill you more than once. They have their 1-star Requiem, but no one's playing the Cleansing Gloves, no one's playing choice belt in Giratina, so they can't Lost Impact to KO your VMAX. You can also mix in a Meloetta if needed, an Ice Cube if you really have to, but that was a pretty quick and clean match. And then we moved on to round 2, my first Snorlax stall of the day. And stall it's an okay matchup for DTE Mew, which is what I played in San Antonio a couple weeks prior. But with Fusion Mew, you are really set up for success. You have 3 switching cards, plus when you have a fusion energy attached, it turns off Snorlax's ability that then allows you to retreat your Pokemon. So if you use Alessa Sparkle to put a fusion on a Genesect, attach a double turbo from hand, you can retreat using that double turbo, and then attack with your VMAX. So I actually played pretty poorly in this match. I kind of threw game 2 and game 3, but I managed to pull out the win anyway because he just didn't have the cards he needed. Round 3 was pretty tough. It was a mirror match, but he was playing DTE Mew, and as the mirror match tends to go, I won game 1. Game 2, he Iono'd me down to 1 or 2 cards, put a path in play, and took a knockout, and I just didn't have it. I had no way to draw out of the path, and then game 3, he stuck a path turn 1 that stayed in play for like 4 turns. I just never drew out of it. Late game Iono as well. So, you know, that's how it goes. Sometimes you just don't draw the cards you need, and I can't really complain because I did the same thing to many opponents, judge path or Iono path, and just hope they break. Now, round 4, this was a super interesting match. I know it says other right here, but it was actually a Roaring Moon, and specifically a Roaring Moon with Spiritomb. It was so disgusting. This man hated Mew. He really, really wanted to beat Mew. And I decided to go first in game whenever I had the opportunity, because going first, they take the first KO as Roaring Moon, but you get the chance to potentially just win the game on turn 1 by putting a path in play. If they can't use their Squawk ability, if they can't Radiant Greninja, you will win the game, almost 100%. But one of the games I stuck a path in play, he had the out. One of them he didn't. It came down to game 3, and we're into time, so plus 3 turns. It is super, super close. Somehow I'm able to overcome this Spiritomb and the Roaring Moon pressure. And we're at a point where he has a Roaring Moon active with 3 energy, a Roaring Moon benched with no energy, and I have my VMAX active with 2 power tablets left in the deck. So I can play a Judge, and then I have one more Genesect draw after that. My deck wasn't too big, and basically if I hit a power tablet, if I hit a good Cram-O-Matic, then I win, basically. I take the knockout on the moon, that's my final 2 prizes. The other option is I could boss up the other Roaring Moon, Psychic Leap, and just go for the tie. And I decided, you know what? I'm here to win. I'm playing to win. I'm not trying to take ties. So let's go for the win. I played the judge, I drew with my Genesect, and I hit neither of my 2 remaining tablets, and so I missed the knockout, and that was the game. But very close one. Round 5, at this point, I was pretty nervous because that is the last loss I'm allowed to take. So 2-2 going into round 5, you're definitely going to see some weird decks. And in this case, I saw a Zoroark Stage 1 toolbox, which was wild. Definitely not a match that I am comfortable with, but the thing that you have to do every time is when they get their Mightyena out, which allows them to one-shot your VMAX, you have to Lost Zone it with the Lost City. So that's what I did as many times as I could. I won game 1, he won game 2 because he was just putting on too much pressure with his attackers. I just couldn't keep up. Or rather, I couldn't take 6 prizes because, six knockouts is a lot when they're hitting you for a lot of damage. But game 3, I was definitely ahead. I was Psychic Leaping to make sure that his Mightyena never came online. I didn't overbench my Genesects, which means that his Scizor wasn't taking one-hit knockouts. So I was playing it pretty well. I was ahead of the prize race, where I needed to be, and then he used a Refinement and drew 3 cards off the Refinement instead of 2, and that was a 2-prize penalty. So in the end, I won that game pretty handily because of the 2-prize penalty. I think I had a pretty good chance without that, but that's Pokemon. If you make a mistake, it is a penalty, and so that's something that I've been on the penalized side of that, and I've been on the opposing side of it. Just happens, and it's part of the game. But we take the win. Round 6 is my second Roaring Moon of the day. Fortunately, this one did not play Spiritomb, and when they don't play Spiritomb, it gives me the ability to just prize race. And the thing is, I can prize race a bit more effectively than they can because I have Meloetta and I have Judge Path. They still need to set up 3 attackers, but me setting up 3 attackers is way, way easier. So I was able to take this one. I was definitely nervous because I wasn't expecting a ton of Roaring Moon, especially not hitting 2 of them day 1, which was pretty scary because any loss at this point in the tournament means I'm out. But I took the win against Roaring Moon. It was a very close match, but a lot of fun as well. Then we're on to Nick Robinson, who recently got top 8 with Miraidon, and I believe former U.S. national champion back in the day when national championships existed. But Nick was playing Miraidon Flaffy. He had the double Raichu, I believe, and he also had a Spiritomb. So he was teched as much as Miraidon can tech for the matchup. But he took a game. It was close, but in the end, Miraidon is just a pretty favorable matchup, so that was that. Round 8, I'm up against my second Snorlax stall of the day. This one was super clean. I had my switch cards, I had my fusion energy to retreat, and it was a very quick 2-0. Felt super, super good about that one. And then round 9, I was so nervous round 9. I was in this exact same position in San Antonio, 6-2. I wanted to ID into day 2 in San Antonio, but my opponent, who was a recent regional champion, of course, wanted the extra points to push for another top 8. So he wanted to play it out. No hard feelings at all. I totally understand. It's just his goals and my goals were not the same. My goal, I want to make it to day 2. I want a solid performance and get some points. He wanted to win the whole thing. So I lost that round 9 match and barely missed day 2 in Texas. This time I walk up to the table and I'm determined to take the intentional draw and just get to day 2. I want to play on Sunday. But I get to my table and my opponent's already there. His playmat's out. He's shuffling his cards. And I go, oh no, I'm in the same spot again. He wants to play it out. Okay, so I mentally prepare myself. I sit down, chat with him for a little bit, and then ask, hey, do you want to ID and just guarantee our spot tomorrow? And he says, oh, thank God, I was just about to ask you. So we ID, we get into day 2, and I know there's a lot of this discussion about, the round 9 ID. It definitely hurts your chances of making top 8. So that is something to keep in mind, but my goal in this tournament, I just needed solid points and I wanted to play on Sunday. And especially after my experience in Texas, I didn't want that to happen again. So I was very happy, very comfortable taking the ID. And even though it may have actually cost me a chance at top 8, I don't regret that decision. I think it was the right call for me at the time. But we're on into day 2, and day 1, as you can see, it was pretty challenging. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, and I guess 5 challenging matchups out of 9. But day 2 was a breeze. It felt so smooth. The deck, well, I drew so well with the deck, and we're up against a Roaring Moon in round 10. Was a very clean set. I set up my Meloetta, I set up my VMAX double tablet to take knockouts, I judged them, I pathed them, and it was super smooth, felt great. So round 10, easy dub versus Roaring Moon. Round 11, same thing versus Miraidon. He was a little bit teched out for the matchup, but doesn't matter. Ultimately, Miraidon is a pretty straightforward one, and I was able to take the win there. Round 12, this was my closest match of the entire tournament. It was pretty crazy, and also nice that it's another LA local who I've played before. So at least if I'm losing to someone, it's to a local. But I won the first game because the matchup is decently favored, I would say, for Fusion Mew. He had the Spiritomb, but I just sparkled to 2 of my Genesects, and that was that. Game 2, I am in a decent spot, and I Iono him to 1 card. All of his 4 Colress are gone. 1 of his 2 Roxanne is gone. He doesn't play Ionos, as far as I can tell. So there's only 3 cards in the deck that could do him any good. His last Energy, his last Mirage Gate, or his last Roxanne. Off the Iono to 1, he gets his last Roxanne into his last Mirage Gate for his last Energy to take the knockout. And oh man, I was a little upset about it, but ultimately, that's Pokemon. There's good and bad luck, and the luck was on his side in that one. So we move on to game 3. It's fine. I have another chance to win. Game 3, I Iono him to 1 into his last Roxanne for his last Mirage Gate for his last Energy to take the knockout. So it happened twice in a row, the exact same scenario. It was something. It was something. So I would say normally pretty favorable matchup, but hey, Tina is a great deck. It won the tournament, and sometimes that's just how it goes. Round 13, faced my first Rapid Strike. That was over very quickly. The Rapid Strike player, they can take some wins against Mew if they draw really well and Mew bricks, or they get the Spiritomb down and I don't have an answer. That was not the case in either match. I cleaned up pretty quickly. Round 14, against a Chin-Pao Baxcalibur that actually teched their own Path to the Peak, which was pretty cool. But this was actually my most lopsided match of the day. I used Block Slider to take, I believe, 10 prizes across 2 games, and he never set up an attacker. He never took a knockout. it was pretty gross, honestly. So I did feel bad for my opponent. Like, he just drew so poorly, and I just block slider, knock out your Frigibacks, block slider, knock out your other Frigibacks, block slider, knock out Trooper Barrel. Just kept going over and over and over again, and he just wasn't able to respond. Round 15, this was, I would say, my second closest matchup of the day after round 12, but as you can see, this one went a bit better, up against Grant Manley, who, as of this recording, is ranked number 2 in the world, actually, for championship points, which is kind of crazy. But he is playing Charizard, and with DTE Mew, I do feel pretty good into the Charizard matchup. With Fusion Mew, it is definitely a challenge. So with Fusion, you want to go second. You hope that they don't get the big board, VIP passes, big hand off of instant charge. That is exactly what he did. At the end of his first turn, going first, he had 11 cards in his hand because I mulliganed a couple times, and then he just built up his board. Full board, 11 in hand. Crazy. So I lost that one. But game 2, we go second again. And this one goes exactly how I'd want the matchup to go. I take an early knockout. I get my VMAX active with Box of Disaster. He sets up his Charizard, hits into the Box of Disaster, and I respond with a KO on his Charizard since it took the 80 damage. All I need is 2 power tablets. And from there, he never set up a second Charizard, and that's just how the match goes. If the Charizard player sets up 2 Charizard, you always lose. So you just have to judge Iono path them into oblivion after you take that first knockout on Zard. And then game 3, it was super, super close, coming down to the wire. I got the same play as before, VMAX active, Box of Disaster, and then I follow up with a KO, Iono path. And off of his 3 cards, we're getting down to the wire. We're not quite in time yet, but he offers the ID before he looks at his cards. And, it can go either way. He could draw Candy Charizard off of his 3 cards and instantly win the game, because I didn't have path in play that turn, I believe. Or maybe it was next turn. Either way, there was one turn where I missed the path, and I just had to hope he didn't draw into it. But he didn't. I declined the ID because, again, same as in that match against Roaring Moon day 1, I'm here to win. I want to play for the win. So I went for it, and he was not able to set up the second Charizard. He bossed up one of my Genesects in +3 turns to try and stall me out and take the tie. I thought I had one more switch card in my deck, so I search, I confirm it's in there, dig for my switch card, I find it, boss up his Rotom for my last 2 prizes, and take the game. So that was a pretty crazy finish, and a really impactful game as well, because my resistance was not very good day 2. My opponents, well, as you can see, there are a couple 10 winners, but people did not have the best day 2. So if I had lost that game, I would have missed top 32. I probably would have been around 33rd, 34th. If I won this game, I get 14th. And so that's the difference between nothing and $2,000, 80 championship points. So this was a really great match. I'm gonna remember this run, but that last match especially was really cool. Let's talk about the list. So this is a very standard Fusion Mew list, but I think that's what you have to do. The deck is very old at this point. It's about to get rotated out. There are no big surprises in Fusion Mew. Any big surprises you're trying to play are probably just suboptimal. Just play the straightforward, consistent list. So we have a 4-3 VMAX, 4 Genesect, our 2 attackers. No Excelgor. Excelgor's bad. Don't play it. For our supporter line, 2 Alessa, 2 Boss, 2 Judge, 1 Iono. And I think this is the only card here that that you may not see in every list, is the second copy of Judge. For me, I found that the second copy of Judge is really impactful against things like Charizard, Roaring Moon, because after you use that first Judge, you don't have to find your pal pad to shuffle it back in, because ideally you want to save your pal pads for an Iono after you play it, a boss, maybe even the judge as well. But if you're forced to find it, or let's say you even prize your one copy of judge, you're just in a really bad spot. So the other card you could play in place of judge, I think, is a Professor Turo. I didn't really see the need for it. I played against 2 Stall and felt very comfortable in that matchup. And outside of Stall, I guess it's helpful against Lost Zone box, but I wasn't too concerned about the Lost Zone matchup. I've always felt pretty favorable into really any Lost Zone variant with Fusion Mew. Just going back to the days when Lost Zone was even the best deck in the format, I was playing Mew. I was playing Fusion Mew, DTE Mew. I felt good into Lost Zone every time. So I didn't feel like I needed that Turo, and I played the second judge instead. 100% the right decision. I don't regret it. I would play this exact 60 to the next event. I wouldn't change a card. 4s across the board, 3 vacuums good, 2 switch cart, and 1 escape rope. And the reason you play that split is if they Radiant Greninja to knock out your, or not, sorry, not knock out, but place 90 damage on each of your Genesects, that means that they just need 2 Sableyes to take 4 prizes. If you switch cart, that removes their ability to, or sorry, if you switch cart twice, so it could be twice in the same turn, could be back-to-back turns, it doesn't let them get that double Lost Mine for 4 prizes, because the math just doesn't quite work out. They're like 10 or 20 damage short. And that is a huge, huge deal, because any extra turn that you get against a Lost Zone deck is, again, 1 more prize that you're taking, 1 step closer to the win. And versus Lost Zone, the prize race does usually come down to the wire. Even if Mew is favored, it's certainly less favored if they're able to pull off that Radiant Greninja play. So the switch cards are helpful. If you decide to go for the Turo over the second judge, which I don't advise, but if you wanted to do that, I would play 2 escape rope and 1 switch card instead. There's also a case to be made for playing switch instead of switch cart, and the reason for that would be it allows you to switch out your VMAX. It doesn't force you to commit as early in the turn as switch cart does, and I know that some, or maybe most Miraidons are playing Tapu Koko EX, which paralyzes, so that only gives you 1 out in the deck to move your VMAX if they paralyze it. Not great, but I would stick with the switch cards for now. If you want to go for switches, that's fine too. For extra ball search, we have 1 feather ball, 1 nest ball. I think that's the right split. It just makes the most sense to me. This searches out your Vs, your VMAX. This gets you Genesects, really gets you whatever you need. But if you play more than 1 nest ball, and this is something that I ran into at Sacramento last year, this year? It's 2024, last year. 2 nest ball can get a little clunky. So 1 nest ball, 1 feather feels like the right split to me. 3 forest stone, you want to see it. You want that redundancy. If you want to save it for later, you need to be able to attach multiple in case they play Lost Vacuums. It's great in the Tina matchup. It's great in the Mirror matchup. It's great every time you see it. So definitely play 3 of those. The 1 box of Disaster, totally vital for the deck. You can't beat Charizard without it. You can't beat Gardevoir without it. And Choice Belt is because of Tina. I think that Tina can be a pretty tough matchup if you don't play the belt. And the reason for that is, unless you get your 4 energy Meloetta, you only have 4 power tablets, which means that if you want to kill a V-Star with a double turbo attached, you need 3 power tablets, and then you need 1 power tablet to kill a V. So that's all 4 power tablets. But let's say you have to burn 1 early game, now you are unable to take a knockout on a V and a V-Star. But if you sub in Choice Belt, and they don't immediately take a knockout on your VMAX with Choice Belt, then you've basically saved 2 power tablets. So this is a huge, huge deal in the Tina matchup. It's also good in the Mirror, just allows you to go through a VMAX a lot more easily. Also good versus random stuff like Arceus, Palkia, but I think it's a necessary evil in the deck. I don't like playing it because I think it would be better as a second box of disaster, or better as an extra consistency card, or whatever it is. But I think because of the prominence of Tina in the meta, you do have to play the Choice Belt for now. For stadiums, we play 2-path, 1 Lost City. I think that's the right split. The Lost City, it gets limited value versus like Lost Zone decks versus Gardevoir, I guess. It gets some value versus, well, it got a lot of value versus the Zoroark Toolbox that I played against. I definitely would have lost that matchup without Lost City. But the other stadium you could sub in is Town Store. The reason I don't like Town Store is that you don't want to give the Mirror Match and you don't want to give Miraidon access to their Forest Stone. Same thing with Charizard, actually, but this is just always playable. So I prefer the Lost City. And that's the list. So it was just an amazing run, amazing tournament. Despite, going so well, and especially during day 2, some of my highlights were just hanging out with friends between rounds and, watching the stream, exploring the convention center. I've been to the Portland regional twice in my playing career, made day 2 both times, and it was just a great venue. Tons of bathrooms, lots of space, very, very friendly atmosphere. Not too cold, a little cold, but not too cold. So yeah, major props to the tournament organizers as well. I believe that was Gallery Games who ran that one. Super well run tournament. But this was my run. That was the top 16. I am now at 411 points out of my goal of 600 to make it to Worlds, and that puts me in the top 1% of championship point earners in North America, as well as top 1% in the world, which is crazy. I never expected in my life that I'd be at the point where I am in the season, but I'm feeling very confident in my ability to close out my invite. I am hoping to go to Vancouver regionals, definitely going to LA regionals since I live here, and I'm also going to EUIC and NAIC. So 4 tournaments, 4 major tournaments, plus capping out my cups and challenges here in LA, which is pretty tough. There are a lot of very good players down here, but I'm doing my best. So thank you so much for watching. Again, drop a comment if you love Mew, if you hate Mew, if you're sad to see it go to rotation, and I will catch you next time.